Hey, I've been in this game for years, and it made me a hodler. 2018 bear market made me a soldier, so I had to write this guide to help you rise up in the ranks. No need for thanks. Rule numero uno, never let no one know how many sats you hold, cause I know you wanna brag, that is facts. It's all fun and games till you get hit in the face.
Hello,
like
ladies
a
and
range
gentlemen.
attack.
This is Brian at Bitcoin Summer. Thank you for joining me for another wonderful episode. Another crazy week in Bitcoin world. What you heard at the top there was from a Twitter buddy of mine named Indelible. And the first E in that is actually a 3. So just don't confuse the spelling. But a little fun song, and I like to support fellow Bitcoiners no matter what they do. So he was kind enough to send me his song, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was not only hip-hop, but hip-hop with a cool, more of my era, like 90s beat to it. So bunch of funny little name drops in there, but you can hear a bunch of references to Bitcoin too as well. So the 10 commandments of Bitcoin, and one of them being don't reveal to anyone the amount of your stack, especially online. Talks about running a node, buying the dip, diamond hands, multi-sig, all the stuff that we talk about on this show. But it also talks about, name drops a bunch of influencers and people that are good thought leaders in the space, like Michael Saylor, and he even mentions Preston Pysh, which I thought was funny on that. And even mine was listed, not by name, but I was shown on the video. My podcast was shown on the video under others, so that was good too. But I'm going to jump right into it because we got a lot to talk about today. Number one, Twitter tipping. The Twitter tipping feature is now fully functional, at least on mine. I watched a bunch of other people get their functionality going before I could on mine, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. So, easier way to support the show, an even easier way and a less expensive way to support the show. Not that $1 tipping here and there is expensive, but just follow me first and see where we go. Let's develop a relationship first. But if you do feel so inclined, if you've been listening for a while, drop me a tip. And you can find me at BitsummerRip on Twitter, and you can tip me right through there through Lightning. So it's an amazing world that we're living in. And I did want to thank somebody who tipped me 2,410 sats. Must have been last week or within the last week. So thank you very much. When I do receive it through my node, I don't have any way of telling who sent me that. So if you did want a shout out, if you did want me to mention while I'm thanking everyone, I just send a little note with it, or send me a message on Twitter and just say, hey, I just sent you this. Thanks for doing the show. So that helps me know that you guys are out there listening too. And always be sending me an email if you guys got any questions or comments about the show or suggestions of show topics, and that just makes the show better. So today I'm going to be sitting down with, we're going back to on Bitcoin Summer, doing more of an interview style show, and I'll intermittently do my presentations as well and my thoughts on certain investment topics and things like that. So that will continue as well, but I do want to intersperse in more of an interview style discussion part of the show, and I found someone great, and it's my brother-in-law, actually. His name is Caleb, and today we discuss just some of the basic questions that he has. He's a newcoiner, and I wanted to bring on a newcoiner, which is originally why I had my original producer who helped me out with the show as well. Now that he's missing in the Pacific Ocean, I wanted to continue that thought and get more of an angle from somebody who hasn't been in it quite as long. And because I think a lot of us just forget, we do so much research and we just forget where we were at even a short time ago. because everything accelerates so fast and it's just really hard to keep up. So I successfully sort of onboarded, but he was into the idea anyway, but successfully onboarded my brother-in-law Caleb, and we have been chatting for almost a year now about it, and it's been progressing. So we were chatting at a wedding, and I was like, hey, why don't you just come on and we can record an episode? And I thought it went fantastically, and I want to make it a regular feature, and we can kind of come back down to earth and speak to more of the basics, or some of the things that even people that have been in the space for a long time kind of gloss over and don't really discuss anymore. And there are certain things as far as portfolio management and wicked price movements and fear in the market that we kind of gloss over. And so I'm so excited to talk about those things again, because those are very exciting things to talk about. And when you talk to people who have been in the space for a long time, that's not a subject of conversation. We're progressing into much more technical and glossy things, but the grassroots of it is portfolio management and making sure that our lives are completely functional monetarily, and to not sacrifice that for doing a very long-term investment and holding on to Bitcoin for long periods of time and not putting yourself into financial distress by doing that. So we talk about all of that stuff, and this is going to be a two-parter, so please subscribe to the show, and we'll pick up where we left off at the end of this break in the middle of the conversation next week. So make sure to check that out. And we have a video version on YouTube if you prefer that, or we have the podcast version as well. So check both of those out if you haven't yet. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things. With the show, we talk about price movements and certain paths that Bitcoin has taken with its price. And I obviously don't remember going through a 50% drop with my holdings in 2019. So I purchased in 2018, and I mentioned in the episode I never went through a 50% drop, but I definitely did. But it makes sense that I didn't really remember that because it wasn't a huge part of my portfolio at the time. It became a huge part of my portfolio in 2020, so much more easy to detect a 50% drop of your net worth overnight or within a week. And it's nice when you're up quite a bit before that happens, so it's nice to have a little bit of cushion. So we do talk about the pain of these drops. We talk about position yourselves to be prepared when we do have these drops, and everything and anything under the sun regarding the basics of Bitcoin. And then we're going to progress with Caleb, and we're going to learn more and more from him, and he's going to learn from us, and we're going to just have a fun time just rebuilding what we've already learned. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it and a little bit more from Indelible. Thank you for joining me. This is Bitcoin Summer.
Wouldn't you want to cop it? Listen to Michael Saylor and breathe love, and that guy Swan as he reads stuff. Stefan L, Preston Pish. Every day I wonder what Bitcoin did. Many others, but for now, that's it. So follow these rules as you wait for the next leg up. 100K, the whole financial world gets a shake up. All their mouths stay shut. They hate us, can't praise us, and citadels will place us.
I think maybe what we should discuss is, I don't know, like maybe a continuance of what we were talking about at the wedding last weekend. And I think I remember there were a couple things that you had brought up that were like, there's like a few things that I don't understand. And, you can never really, when we're having that conversation, you can never really think about it at the time, or like certain specific things.
Sure.
And I think when you and I talk, it's like we talk about the price, or we talk about like the recent news or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But what I always forget with, especially like my friends that don't know much about it, I always forget, like, I don't know what they don't know.
Right. And a
So
lot of times, people might just pretend like they know what you're talking about, and then shit's going right over my head all the time. And I'm like, yeah, totally. So
yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
happy to slow you down and ask some questions.
Yeah.
Was myself as ignorant.
Uh, um, I would like to say newcoiner.
Newcoiner.
Yeah, because we were talking with Brad about the Lightning Network,
Mm-hmm.
and at a 3-year-old's birthday party, and I remember you were like, "Hey, this is like a really good conversation. Like, this is like the details that you guys are getting into, and the questions that
Mm-hmm.
is asking, they're amazing because." You can like describe Lightning Network, but when you describe Lightning Network to somebody who doesn't know what even Bitcoin is, the whole, like, for me it was hard because I had to like backpedal everything and be like, okay, let me rewind, like, what doesn't Brad know? And then you realize nothing. And then so you have to bring it all the way back.
Right.
And it's fun. It's more of me just like kicking myself and being like, I just don't know how to talk about this stuff. So like, I think if we can filter through kind of stuff that is just already been said,
Yeah,
and
that's definitely what's gonna have
get
to
to stuff like get to stuff that you're concerned about as a holder of Bitcoin, and something that like probably I don't even really consider anymore, and that I probably should, but like concerns that you have, that is like um like how much should I hold, like what should I do when it has a good price run, like all of these different things. Like, I don't know where your head's at, so let's just start there, I think.
You're about to find out how little I know, my friend.
But that's good. That's what I want. That's because sometimes I feel like I was um talking to Nina and you, and I was just like, you have to buy it. And if sometimes I feel like I didn't even explain that, and like you guys just think I'm a crazy wild man who's just like the guy with the stock pick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So those concerns that you have that you haven't voiced to me yet, like stuff like that.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. I did not prepare as I had planned.
That's probably good.
I have no questions queued up really, besides
Good.
I stole a couple from Nina. So
Okay. Oh, good. I'm starting to lose sunlight now. So by the way, I already started recording, so we're jumping in. So you just shoot whatever you got.
You want me to start you with some questions, or
Yeah. Give me a second. I'm losing daylight here. This is always good podcasting. This is always really good podcasting when you're doing the lights
during the recording?
Yeah, it's really great.
The people want to see. They want raw, real shit.
Yeah, it's better to do that now when we're like rolling with the conversation, and it's like my face is completely black and you can't see it.
So I guess here's one aspect that I definitely, when I'm looking at Bitcoin, I'm trying to track, like, what does this mean where it's at now compared to where it's been over the past month? And then I compare it to where it's been over the past year. And I'm like, I look at it and I'll look back at like the scale of the year, and I'm like, well, this big drop that everyone's bitching about or whatever isn't really shit. Like, we're back to where we were at the beginning of the month, but it is this pretty significant drop.
Yep.
Is that really a time where I should be like, well, I should really dump a bunch of money in, or do I just continue to stick on my regular regimen and wait for a bigger, like, how big of a drop is worth investing in?
That's a super good place to start. I love that angle, because you know, and I really haven't been in for a long period of time compared to, you know, the real OGs. 2018 for me, and when I came in, the price was 7,000, and it dropped from 20,000 to 7, and that's when I bought it.
Wow, good timing, my friend.
And I didn't that was the exact reason why I bought it.
Sure.
You know, and I didn't know anything about Bitcoin, and I've talked about this briefly on the show before, but it bears repeating because it wasn't this philosophical like hope currency for me yet. It was a couple years away from that still, you know. It was literally going to be a trade, or
Yeah.
even
To you.
yeah, and like kind of where I was with stocks at that time, because I was pretty heavily into investing by that point. And where I was with stocks was a long-term time frame, which worked really well with how a lot of Bitcoiners position themselves. But my long time frame was probably not as long as it is now, even. And
Sure.
I think it was more like with Bitcoin, when I bought it, I was like, if this thing pops up, you know, if I bought it at 7, so if it pops up to 14,000, you know, if it even gets halfway back up to the 20,000, I'll be happy with that. And I'm going to take half off the table. It's you know, in my mind, back then I was like, it's a risky asset. So what I'm going to do is literally take half off the table, keep half in Bitcoin, and just let it ride and see where it goes. So all of these people with crazy like moonshot ideas, like, oh, you know, then I can position myself to benefit from those gains. But at the same time, I took all of my risk off the table, right?
Yeah.
So that was my original plan. Now, what happened over the years was it didn't quite get to that $14,000 level. It just like, it would be up to like 12, and then it would go down below 7, but it never really dipped much past 7, because I bought like the beginning of the bear market, and then the bear market just like chugged along. And so bring us to 2020, and that's when I really, you know, really did a deep dive, and then I really got into it, and then that's when everything started to ramp up. So I'm at this weird place where I started without a ton of conviction at a low price, so I didn't have to suffer through a 50% drop. I did March 2020, but I only had like $1,000 in, $1,300 in March 2020.
Yeah.
So I didn't care by that point, and that was such a small part of my portfolio. I was like, what? That's when everything clicked for me, and I was like, oh, there's not any deals on the stock market. Like this stock market should be tanking. It barely even went, I think it barely even went 40% down from the highs in March. And Bitcoin did, I think it was like 50% overnight for sure, March 12th, 2020. And that's when everything clicked for me, where I was like, now is the time to start accumulating.
Sure.
And
a bunch of research in there.
Yeah, well, over the years, because you own it, you do more and more research, right? So that's why I tell people to just buy some first, because then you're going to be interested in your stack, right? And then because you know you want to find out stuff about your money. And like, I think when you're investing in stocks, it's sort of the same thing, because you get kind of interested in the stories of these stocks, and you get interested in like you know, what their latest move is going to be on the market. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. Is like, I own some, and this thing was just wild to me because it would do these swings, and I was like, what is going on here? And I think the most fortunate thing for me is that there were little bits that I would sell, but I didn't sell even close to the bulk of what I had.
Sure.
And so I kept on to most of the 2018 stack. And, you know, this is my long way of saying we get to May of this year, 2021, and we have a 50% drop. And then it just kind of like sat there, right? And a lot of new people that enter the space are like, you know, this doesn't feel good. Because a lot of my friends that I talk to, they got in you know, February or March or April, and they weren't like, I experienced when I bought the bulk of it was like starting in November, when I really started to just like sell my stocks and just like literally like I go to bed every night and I'm like, I don't have enough Bitcoin.
1 year ago, November.
Yes. And then I was sitting around with you guys on Thanksgiving, and it was at like 20,000, and I think it dropped to like 16 and a half. And I did like immediately, like I was like, oh, excuse me, guys. And I'm like buying Bitcoin on Thanksgiving. I remember that specifically.
Yeah. And I talked to you for about 5 minutes and whipped out my phone and bought Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That night.
And it was a good purchase too.
Sure was.
Because that 16 and a half, within, you know, you had, you know, so Thanksgiving's the end of November. So you had 1 month. So by December, you were, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we were at like 30,000 almost by then. Or we were at 20 for sure. And then it was like, you didn't even see really 20 anymore. Because 20 was like the hard place to get to, right? And
well,
once we
that's what I'm like, I got questions for you here.
So going back to 2018. So like the bull run of 2017 went all the way to 20,000, plummet to 7. So this is the psychological level for Bitcoin, right? So people who buy Bitcoin or even speculate on it, they get to this $20,000 range, and it cannot surpass that because it's just this hard barrier, right? They call that resistance in the trading world.
Okay.
And when we broke it in 2020, it was off to the races. It went all the way basically in a straight line to 64. There were corrections within there, but it basically from November to, you know, right before May, the May 11th, May 10th crash, it was literally almost a straight line up to 65. And that's when everyone was like, this thing's going to 100. By the end of the year, this thing's going to 300,000. Yeah. And, you know, people get burned that way because then they start over levering themselves, and you don't foresee things happening like, you know, a complete FUD campaign from the media. And
stop you with FUD.
Yeah.
Nina wanted me to ask this. So when you say FUD campaign, what do you mean by that?
So FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And kind of the prevailing thought amongst Bitcoiners, I would say, most of them, you know, a lot of them have an aversion to mainstream media. And it feels like from May onwards, and even this week, even what happened this past week with China and stuff.
I was listening to your last cast, so I have some minor knowledge on the topic.
Yeah, you see all of this. So what I mean like by a FUD campaign is like you see all of this, almost the same headlines come out of like 5 different major publications at the same time.
Gotcha.
And then you hear about these huge, you know, whether it be a hedge fund or a huge asset manager, you hear about them like a month or 2 later, they were buying up.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, it's not so far-fetched to think that they were paying these reporters to just be like, hey, you know, right. Bitcoin is the worst thing for the environment that there ever was and ever will be, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by FUD campaign. And I know, like, I gloss over that on the show. And I think, it's my mistake because I think that everyone has that lingo, but it is a hard concept to wrap your head around because
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's a concept I think most people have thought about. Like I certainly did. Like so, Elon Musk, Doge coining his way to try and chip away at Bitcoin is like my first thought was like this asshole is trying to turn to lower Bitcoin. So that's basically what you're getting at, right? Similar concept.
absolutely. And he kind of started that off in May, and it was the April, May, like Elon bullshit. And I think, I think a lot about the situation that happened with Elon, and it is the musings of a madman. I think about like his actions towards Bitcoin and only like a billionaire who doesn't give a shit about money or other people's welfare acts the way that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was all this good news coming out of El Salvador, and he didn't even blink an eye. And there were prominent Bitcoiners out there that's like, Elon, you have to like think about it. Like there's a country that 70% of people in the country are unbanked, and the Lightning Network is helping them. But you're talking about the ease of payment with Dogecoin. And let me do the list. Tesla owns $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. They don't own any Dogecoin. SpaceX, he revealed, owns Bitcoin. They do not own Dogecoin, as far as I know. That would be a risky fucking bet. It would have went from 70 cents to 20 cents. Even worse drop than Bitcoin did. It's his ego that got in the way.
I got you.
And what happened was, and this was a huge theory coming around that time, was BlackRock, who's a huge asset manager, huge hedge fund, publicly traded. They are one of the biggest investors in Tesla. And there was this huge theory that came out around the time they got him on the phone, and they were like, hey, like, we're going to back out of your stock, that's horrible for him. Like, if he loses that fake prop up of his stock, he loses all of his lifeline. That's the way that he is able to keep that machine going without making profits on cars.
Sure.
Is selling his stock and diluting the shares for his shareholders. And the huge theory was BlackRock wanted to buy Bitcoin. So they were like, throw out this environmental FUD. And sure enough, the market took it like that, because BlackRock saw when Elon announced that Tesla bought 1.5 billion, you saw the price of Bitcoin go through the roof. That was that run, Mm-hmm. And I think we would have seen a run anyway. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, and we can get into that too. I think we're in a secular bull market, but I don't think it would have gone up that fast. And that fast was very, very bad for Bitcoin, I think.
Yeah.
Because like I just mentioned, degenerate longs got way over levered. So they're purchasing their Bitcoin with a loan. And it's mark to market, which means 24 hours a day, if it drops below a certain price, they're forced to sell because their assets aren't worth that much to cover that margin of that loan. So they're forced to sell. And what happens is it hits that price target and it hits that price target, and it's cascading. And same goes for shorts. So that's when you see the big run up in Bitcoin, that's shorts getting liquidated. And so they're forced to buy. So it's just the opposite. It works in both ways. So when people get over levered, it's very bad for the ecosystem and the price. And, Bitcoin is a free market. So it's pure price discovery. So what happens when there's manipulation is that we see these huge swings, and that's what happens with something that's so thinly traded like Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna swing you back a little bit because you're already going over my head again. So
Sorry about that.
I like where you're at. The first initial question was, when do I know if the dip is worth investing in?
Well, yeah, I think the way that you brought it up first, I thought was a clever way to put it. It was like, is this dip now? Is this like the time when I'm like, okay, I need to push a little bit, like a bigger stack of chips in, right?
Right, exactly.
And so it's a hard question to answer because we all have different goals. We all have different reasons why we're in this, right? And
I guess here's the way I look at it is like, so I also have a Roth IRA, and I also look at the market when I'm, not that it's like, it's kind of dumb to try and play the market with those long-term things, right? We know that, but you still want to.
Right.
For example, I just put a bunch of money in to my Roth IRA, like more than I normally do the other day. And then the market plummeted right afterwards. And I was like, well, I feel like a fucking dumbass, but I mean, not my fault.
Yeah.
Just guessing and just, dumping money in when I think I can. So
yeah,
when you see a dip, then you want to take advantage of it. But then it's like, is this dip worth it? And I sometimes, I think I'm taking advantage of one, and then I'm like, that didn't pan out to be any more successful than my standard $10 a week or $50 a whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The question really is like, what would you consider a dip that's worth contemplating putting more money into than just like any other dip?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for me because like I don't do scheduled dollar cost averaging, and I probably should be. But
you're the one who made me do that, dude.
I know. Here's why. Because number one, you're going to probably beat me performance wise. And number two, I'm attached to the hip at this stuff with this stuff. Like,
yeah.
I'm
not paying attention to the degree you are. Not even close. Like I wouldn't, that's part of the reason that's why I need to ask this question, because I'm not paying attention enough to.
So the easiest way I can explain it, Caleb, is, and I got this from Warren Buffett. If you're not willing to, or don't have the time, not just willing, if you don't have the time or the capability or just the interest of stock research, and this is going to the traditional stock market, if you don't have the time to sit there and dedicate your entire life to it, you should be buying an S&P 500 ETF, and you will do very, 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 very well. And if you dollar cost average with all of your extra money at the end of the month, every single month, you're going to do super, super, super well. But there is a way to beat the performance of the S&P 500, but it's very difficult. And you do have to breathe it, and you have to live it. And I don't think you need to get that crazy with it. But the reason why I suggest this to anyone I talk to, and definitely suggested to you, my family members, is I'm not trying to turn people into traders. I'm not a trader even. I'm trying to turn people into good savers. And there's two different things.
Right.
And if you want to do trading, or if you even want to do stuff like me, which I don't consider trading at all because I don't sell, but I time my buys, which is basically a dollar cost average.
Yeah.
But I time my buys with dips. That's how I've done it with Bitcoin. And I used to do that with stocks as well. I have a price target in mind. And when the price hits that, I buy it, and I don't buy it before that. I don't go chasing for prices.
So do you essentially save up money, and instead of buying it incrementally, you just know this money is going into this, and as soon as I watch it dip beneath this, then I'm buying it? That's essentially the strategy.
Well, I like to look at it, my life before Bitcoin and my life after Bitcoin. And my life before Bitcoin, I would have, a fairly diversified portfolio. And by fairly diversified, I mean like maybe 10 stocks at the most. Because, and this is another thing with Warren Buffett, you always want concentration, because when you over diversify, and you don't need more than 10 to just diversify and make it just, you can make it diversified enough if you have 10 stocks. But if you start getting into the 50 stock range, like some of these people do, 100, some people have like 200 different stocks in their portfolio. Why are you not just buying the S&P 500 index and just sitting on it? You're wasting all of your time being like, oh, this 100 stocks are better than this 100. So at some point you start becoming undiversified. You're becoming too diversified. So what you're doing is you're diversifying your gains away.
Yeah.
And you're basically just equaling the return of the S&P. So this is my long way of saying what happened was I had my investment portfolio. So I had a chunk of my money just dedicated to investments, right? Now, what happened life after Bitcoin is that stuff slowly got chipped away until it was basically nothing. I sold the last of my Apple stock in the middle of summer of this year. And that was the last of my stocks. I put that into Bitcoin too, because the price had gone to 30,000. So that's an example of what happened. So yes, there is a chunk of my money that is solely dedicated to investments. And some of that portfolio can have cash in it waiting for dips. So you can see it as the big basket, and you can have stocks, and you can have whatever, real estate, Bitcoin, and cash. And the cash is garbage, but it's good when you need it for opportunity. And that's been my philosophy life post Bitcoin, because I do not like to not have cash when these dips do happen, because have gotten myself into that situation. And I can tell you when I was in that situation specifically, and that was when I literally was all in all the way up to 65. And I was telling you last weekend, I was buying, I think I bought all the way to 60. I think my highest was like 57, but it was only at that 65 for like a half a day. So I didn't even have time. I would have bought, but I think my highest purchase was 57 because it stayed around that price a little longer, so I was just in the right place. And literally that drop, I had nothing. And not that I was destitute, it's that I didn't have any more money in my portfolio for investing. I had to pay bills with all the rest of my cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, looking around the house to sell chairs and stuff, and nothing was coming up. And and that's when you put yourself in the position of, that's why I like to have you guys do a specific dollar amount and just a specific time.
That makes the most sense. I mean, that's how all investing works. If you're not paying attention, that's the only way to take advantage of it properly.
And you guys will benefit so heavily from that. But that's not to say,
I feel like you're still tiptoeing around the question of when do I decide, okay, and maybe this isn't even a fair question because you are answering it to some degree. But right now, Bitcoin is on a down. And I'm like, what percentage of my portfolio should I be like, oh, like now's a good time that I should invest more than usual. Feels like I should, but I don't know. Like that's where I get cold feet, and then I don't do anything. Then it goes back up, and I'm like, shit. And then I'm like, it's going back up, and then I put some more in, and then it's not the best time, and then it goes down, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I shouldn't.
Okay, this is gonna sound like dodging, but
okay.
What did you do when it dropped to 30? Over the summer.
See, this is kind of my problem too, is I look at it when I have the money, right?
Yeah.
So
this is another reason why you need a dollar cost averaging.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, like I have extra money to put in it, and I just kind of look where it's at, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like the right time. So like at that time, I was like, I don't think I really did anything, but I kept doing. I think I had it set at $10 a week right now, something just small.
Yep.
And
yeah,
I just left it. But like, then there's, I don't even know when it was. I couldn't tell you, because this is how uncalculated I am and irrational of a human I naturally am. I just like, oh shit, looks down right now on this little graph on Cash App. And then I'm like, boom, there's 5. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it doesn't, I'm not timing it right. And it shows.
Yeah. Yeah, there's there's 2 answers to go back to your specific question. And one is, the reason why I asked that is the time to buy was during the summer, 30,000.
Sure. Okay.
My part 2 of that answer is, this is all a rounding error. And what I mean by that is, when the price is where it's going to be at, where I think it's going to be at in the next 5 years and 10 years, we're going to look back and be like, are you fucking kidding me? I was worried about between 30 and 60.
Okay. So that's perfect. And that's kind of what I wanted to hear you say, because that's when I'm looking at like the graphs and everything. And I'm like, this drop or this, whatever, like when I look at it in a big picture, in a yearly picture, I'm like, this is nothing significant, really. Like if you're going long term, which I think anyone who doesn't know what they're doing is going long term, right? Or they should be.
Yeah. That's I talked to you a little bit about this in the spring, and I feel bad because I think you put a little bit in, and then it was like probably towards the top. Mm-hmm. But also and if I didn't tell you this, then shame on me, but I'm pretty sure I told you, kiss this money goodbye.
Yes, you made it very clear that I could not call you or Venmo request you for the money I lost. Wait, no, I'm keeping track of.
What I mean by that is, it needs to be money that you don't need for 10 years. Right. And because in 10 years, this is life-changing money. Mm-hmm. And I full-heartedly believe that. And it's the reason why I hesitated telling you guys about it, but it's the reason why I had to tell you guys about it, because this isn't a penny stock flip, like stock tip. Yeah. This is, in my opinion, going to be life-changing money. And you don't even have to put in life-changing money to change your life. Right. And that's the cool part about where we're going with this. And if you just see the adoption that's happening right now, if you do that alone and not even talk about the scarcity and not even talk about anything else, this thing's going to 1 million within the next 10 years. And if it doesn't, it will be like 5 or 10 years after that. And I have that long of a time horizon on this, because this is retirement money. This is family planning money. This is my kids' money. Like it's getting into the realm of like, I won't even be able to use it all, and I will have someone to pass down. Whereas 2 years ago, I was like, I'm never going to be able to pass anything down to my kid, and it flipped everything on its head for me. And maybe I'm chugging the hopium, but it does really give me hope. And it really gives me hope, not just financially for me personally, but for the world, because of the things that it's actually doing across the world, and for people that are unbanked, and for poor countries that are reliant on the US dollar. There are just so many things coming down that I can't help but spend my free time promoting it with this stupid podcast and this stupid YouTube channel, because I believe in it that much, and which is the reason why I needed to tell you guys first. And then, so hopefully, we can all front run these large corporations that are getting in within the next couple of years.
I got to tell you, Brian, you're doing a great job, because it takes about 15 minutes into one of your podcasts before I fork over $100 into my Cash App. So
that's my goal. You're pumping my bags.
Yeah.
No, but and I'm not trying to be dodgy about this price thing, but it's complicated because
I get it. I got you.
Yeah. So Amazon stock in 1998, for a couple of years you saw 90% drawdowns. So this 50% drawdown, and even compared to Bitcoin a couple of years ago in 2018, not a big deal. And this is where I feel this is where I completely agree with you. Like, it is so scary to see it, especially if you own it, to go from 60 to 30 and then be like, do I buy now, or do I wait for it to go to 20? Or do I, wait for a confirmation that it's going to be going on its way to 60 again? And so people get caught in this. And I think you suffer from this too. And I think everyone who has kind of an emotional reaction to the market, which I definitely do, but I have tried to tame over the years, is you get caught into this area of you freeze. You know what I mean? You get caught into no reaction whatsoever when you should actually be reacting. And you should have dry powder for those moments. And that's the hardest thing in investing is having that dry powder in those moments. And like I said, this first initial drop, so this was in, early summer, late spring, early summer, 64 or whatever it was, to basically straight drop to 30. And there was a couple fake outs where it was like, oh, it's going back up to 60. This is going to be great. And I got caught in those too. Trust me. And like I said, I was completely out of fiat. I was completely out of dollars. But you have income coming in. And so luckily for the next couple months in the summer, I was like, I don't want to be caught with my pants down again, because I for sure was, and I should have been buying at that point. What I was doing was buying before it hit the bottom. What I was doing was buying while I was catching a falling knife, they call it.
Yeah.
And luckily I got a longer dip than I deserved. And then it really dropped, and then it was like 28, and everyone's like, it's going to 15,000. I saw stuff online, it was going to 5. It's going to 5,000. I'm waiting for it to go to 5,000. I'm going to put my bids in. It's like, no, it's not. It's just not. In fact, I don't think it's ever dropping below 20 ever again.
So hold on real quick, Brian. Where are we at right now? What do you think today? What are we looking at?
As far as the rest of the, year's performance, or
basically, like,
are we going down any further
today? Like, what would be the point? Would there be no point in putting extra money in today? Would there be some benefit? Or
my buddy texted me on
you're dodging.
My buddy texted me on Tuesday, and he goes, should I pull the trigger now? And I go, your day was yesterday. Because I bought a shitload on Monday.
Okay.
And that's it's funny because it even dropped again. So like we saw twice this week. We saw twice a huge bounce off of 41,000. So
Yeah, right now, what are we at today? Right now,
42 and a half, I think.
42,749.
Okay, so it's not looking too bad today. So here's my thesis for what's going on right now. The last couple big players, and this is why I know that the last couple big players are buying right now, is because these bids are insane right now. The volume that is getting purchased at this $41,000 level, 42, like right around, it's almost like they know.
Time to buy in, right?
Yes, which is why I was buying at 41 on Monday.
Yeah.
And I should have been buying at 41 on Wednesday or whatever that was, Thursday. But guess what? I was out of fiat again. Or at least I want to like, have a couple extra bucks for a rainy day. Like I'm getting to that point where it's like, okay, now like you got to pump the brakes a little bit, right?
From the rainy day fund.
Exactly. So here's my thing. We have a huge floor right now at 41,000.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you say a huge floor, explain yourself.
Okay, so like, remember what I was talking about, the psychological barrier of 21 or 20,000?
Sure, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right now we're at, there's ceilings and there's floors in trading, and traders trade around those, whether you want them to or not. They just do. And it's self-fulfilling prophecy for them.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, a lot of action that happens with Bitcoin is from traders, because those people have to make money too. We're all a part of this free market. If you have a free market, you're going to get people trading around the edges and arbitraging the situation. So what's happening is right now where we're at is we settled on a pretty good price floor right now, and that price floor is 41,000. It's not as strong as our price ceiling was back in 2020 of 20,000. It's not as strong as that. So what I'm saying is there is a possibility, there's a good possibility that we drop below 41.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it goes much below that. I think there are a couple professionals out there who are saying it's, with the on-chain data, it's almost impossible in the near term for it to drop below 38,000. I think if you saw anything near there, I would be selling chairs, and I would be selling, vehicles and going all in. But
just the bottom where it's worth dumping money into to some degree.
So here's the way I look at it. We are probably, I would say, within a couple percent of the bottom. So yes, that would mean it's a good time to buy right now.
Okay.
And by bottom, I mean, like I said, we could drop below some more, but your risk is so much lower than when it was when we were up at 52,000, right?
Yeah.
So now, like, here's what you don't want to do is get that FOMO when we crash past 52 and you're like, shit, I didn't buy enough when it was 42.
Yeah.
This is what you don't want.
Yes, exactly.
So
I also don't want to buy a bunch at 42 and watch it drop and then be like, well, fuck, I just dropped, a couple grand that I could have dropped months later.
Right. Here from my experience of investing, and I don't know if it's helpful for you at all, but
no, I'm basically asking an unanswerable question. I understand that.
No. No, I like where your head's at. So here's the way I think about it.
If there was a clear-cut answer to this, we'd all be investors. So.
Exactly. We'd all be billionaires.
Right.
My whole thing is, and I had to learn this very much the hard way over many years. So this isn't an easy lesson, and even me telling you still probably won't absorb it, because I had people telling me this and I was like, yeah, whatever. I know I can time the bottom perfectly. And here's what you got to, here's a place you have to get to with investing. It's never going to look perfect. Investing's not about perfection. It never is. It never will, but you can never be perfect. You can never time that exact bottom. And the times that I have, I'm the cockiest motherfucker of all time. I'm like, I'll show Allison the chart and I'll be like, look, we timed the bottom. It was, and she's like, yeah, wow, that was great. Cool. And I'm like, well, I thought it was pretty cool. And it happens so rarely that it's like such a like, yes, it's amazing. You don't know. This is a random walk, especially with Bitcoin. It's a random walk. With stocks, it's random. You don't know what hedge fund is purchasing or selling today. And so here's my point, my roundabout way of saying, you're going to hurt yourself by trying to perfectly time that bottom.
Yeah.
But if you can get closer to the bottom than others, that's a good place to start. And I would say right now is going to be a close place towards the bottom that you can put a little bit in. And then if it drops to 40, you put a little bit more. And then if it drops to 38, you put all of it in. And that's where I'm at right now. And not all in, I don't mean like, you guys aren't eating next week. You know what I mean? Like that's money that you kissed goodbye already.
Right.
That's how I always look at investment money. It's always, you've already kissed it goodbye because you're putting it at risk, no matter how you want to slice it. And I could be looked at as the worst risk manager of all time because like all of my portfolio is in Bitcoin. But the way I look at it is like I own a house too. So like that's a huge hedge against my Bitcoin play, right? Mm. So I technically I'm not 100% Bitcoin. I do have real estate, and some people are selling their real estate to buy Bitcoin, and like I'm not quite there yet. That scares me half to death. And also it like creates income. You have a duplex too, so like we have the income coming from that too. So like
you pump that Bitcoin to win.
I mean, if I gotta tell you though, if Bitcoin went to 20 again, the house would be gone.
House would be gone.
Yeah.
The groceries would be gone.
Yeah, we wouldn't be eating for hopefully the turnaround would be quick.
Back up.
Exactly. You don't want to ever rely on the market going back up because you could be sitting here all summer like I was with my thumbs up my ass being like, what the fuck am I doing? I made a huge mistake.
All right, Brian, I need to take a quick commercial break. Do one of your little note things, and I'm going to take a quick leak.
Cool.
Then we should get back at it.
All right, we're going to take a bathroom break, folks. Caleb here he goes. He's going to the bathroom. He's tipping the hat.